Okay, so this is a very common argument. People will say FGM is not done for religious reasons. They're implicitly trying to draw a contrast with male circumcision, which at least sometimes is done for religious reasons. But it's important to remember that it's often also done for non-religious reasons, and very few people object to that case. And so it seems that this is a little bit of a red herring. But let's just think about the argument. Is the suggestion that if female genital cutting were done for religious reasons, then it would be morally permissible? That seems to be an implication of this view. And yet I think almost everyone who makes this argument doesn't really think that. They think that even if it were done for religious reasons, it would still be impermissible. And so this suggests that this is maybe a disingenuous argument. As we saw in the case of the Dawoodi Bohra, as I was discussing earlier, there are some sects of Islam who do consider both male and female circumcision on their view. In fact, they use a similar Arabic word, khatna, which means circumcision, and it doesn't distinguish between the male and the female forms. So they use the same word to refer to both practices, which they consider to be an egalitarian equation between welcoming the girls into the same religious privilege that the boys have. So if you don't think that that's okay, then you shouldn't be making this false argument that it's not done for religious reasons, because it is in some groups, and presumably you don't think it's okay even then, or maybe you do. We'll have to figure out how we want to talk about this as a society. Another implication of this view seems to be that if a practice is done for merely cultural reasons, then it's more of a bad habit that doesn't deserve any kind of respect. But that doesn't follow either. So a practice might be merely cultural in the sense that it's not literally described in the primary scripture of a religious group. But that's a very Western Protestant way of deciding what counts as a religious practice. The line between religion and culture is very, very vague and blurry. And so if that's how you're defining something being a religious practice, you're already going to be in trouble making a convincing argument. But something, even if it were merely a cultural practice, might be central to the way of life of a group of people and have great symbolic and social significance to them. And so at least prima facie would be worthy of some kind of respect. And by contrast, something might be a literal religious practice and that it's written into a holy book, but still be something that's highly objectionable and should be criticized and might not be worthy of respect. So the mere fact that something is or isn't a religious practice, which is already a tenuous logical distinction, and anthropologically and historically it's tenuous as well, is not determinative as to the level of respect that's owed to the practice, or whether the practice is permissible. But also, again, I don't think anybody really thinks that this is the reason why one practice is permissible and the other isn't, because in the case of male circumcision within Islam, it also is not mentioned in the Quran, which is what people tend to be saying when they refer to female circumcision, quote unquote, not being a religious practice. But no one has any trouble seeing male circumcision as a religious practice, even within Islam, where it isn't mentioned in the primary scripture. And as I said, in the United States, it's predominantly done for clearly cultural reasons, where there's no religious significance for the vast majority of people who do this in the United States. And there are not global human rights campaigns trying to eliminate this non-religious form of male circumcision that's also clearly non-consensual. It's done to babies. So the something being merely cultural is clearly not a reason to oppose it, according to the predominant view. And then finally, female circumcision is mentioned in the Hadith, which are the sayings of Muhammad, a source of secondary Islamic scripture, which is where male circumcision is mentioned. They're mentioned in a similar context, such that at least two of the major schools of jurisprudence within Islam consider both male and female circumcision to be either recommended, in one case obligatory, or at least religiously virtuous, because they have comparable standing in the secondary scripture. And as I say, there's no pope in Islam to say what the one final authoritative interpretation is of these various secondary sources. And so it comes down to the interpretation of each individual religious community. And among the Dawoodi Bohra, among other groups, both male and female genital cutting are explicitly religious practices. So again, for those who think that the reason why FGM is wrong is because it's not religious, and the reason why male circumcision is okay is because for some groups, namely observant Jews, it is religious, then at least to be consistent, they should be contesting all the non-religious forms of male circumcision, which they aren't doing. And they have to figure out what they're going to say about female circumcision when it's explicitly religious, as it is for the group that led to the striking down of the US law. So, okay, that's enough about that.